ReelBlenders, and welcome to episode number 288 of ReelBlend, a podcast that's trading our Thanksgiving leftovers for holdovers. Thank you very much.
I really wish you just let that beat sit for like
a little bit longer?
2 or 3 more seconds.
Want me to try it again? Let me try it again.
Yeah, one more time. Here we go.
A podcast that's trading our Thanksgiving leftovers.
Hold it. Let it simmer. All right, bring it in.
For holdovers.
There it is.
There we go. Gabe, cut and print that one. We're done.
Yeah, that's how we do the whole show. It's just directing each other. I cut all that out usually.
On this week's show, we're all back and it's insufferable. We have a lot of movie reviews to catch up on. And this week, filmmaker Alexander Payne is joining the show to discuss his new film, The Holdovers, which did we say we're going to review that? Are we reviewing that later in the show?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll be a lot of fun. Let me introduce the guys because we're all back. So I was down and out, sick. I got to listen to Jake and Gabe carry the load for the Ridley Scott and Joaquin Phoenix. Excellent job, guys. You guys did a fantastic job with that.
Thank you.
It was fun to hear Jake mention how weird it is. He was like, no one should think that these are like my stories or through the filter of me, because it was Kev. I don't know how you felt. I'll start with Kevin McCarthy at Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Like I wanted to be part of that conversation. I really wanted to, but it's travel. And then I got really sick. And so I missed out, catching up on those amazing opportunities.
I mentioned, I don't know if you guys got that, who heard what, or if I mentioned it, but as I mentioned on the show for the listeners at home, as the year comes to an end, it's a perfect time for us to reflect on the year. And so the plan is for an episode before the end of the year, all of us together talking about our year, and you guys will get the chance to talk about Paris in depth. So
gotcha.
Yeah, and that particular, so like the day you both recorded, I know Sean was sick. I was flying back from Los Angeles literally while you guys were recording. But the interviews, if you haven't heard them, if you're just tuning into this show this week and you haven't heard the past week's shows or the bonus episodes, the Joaquin Phoenix interview is awesome, and so is Sir Ridley Scott. And Jake and Gabe did justice to the stories. But as Sean said, like there were so many little details about those moments with Joaquin, particularly like, he was making an espresso, as, we talked about, and we talked about Chuck Taylor's, and then we all sat down. We didn't even know we were rolling yet. And then we realized we were 5 minutes in and we were actually recording, which I thought was funny. But Joaquin was incredible. That was a really great experience.
To him call himself Wok in the middle of that story multiple times. Because
now Sean's ringtone now.
Wok.
Michelle calls, you just hear Wok.
Yeah. The idea that Joaquin Phoenix has been on our show twice is kind of insane.
It's pretty ridiculous.
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Ridley Scott's been on our show twice.
Yeah.
Yes, he has.
Christopher Nolan's been on our show twice.
Tom Hanks has been on. Quentin Tarantino's been on the show 4 times.
On 4 times,
wow.
Yeah. Why are we doing this anymore?
Is there anyone in the three-peat club right now, or is it just 2 and then the 1?
Damien? Has Damien been on 3 times?
Damien was. Chazelle was twice.
Yeah. Twice?
Oh, wait. Still happening.
Kevin's back.
Yeah, there we go. If you're just listening to audio, I just put the number 2 up for Damien Chazelle, and a bunch of balloons exploded.
Which is used to believe that Kevin's been hacked, but like these are like the most like kind, generous, playful hackers of all time. They're like, we just wanted to have a good time.
Yeah, I think I was interviewing like John Batiste today, and like about a very serious film, and I think my thumbs up ended up in the actual frame like that. I was like talking to him about this serious movie he made with his wife called American Symphony. But yeah, anyways, I've been trying to keep my hands out of frame when I talk now because I can't seem to. I've uninstalled, reinstalled Zoom. I've gone through every single trial and error of everything, and it won't go away. If anybody listening to this has any idea how to get rid of these stupid gestures, and I know that there's a gesture button.
It's not us. It's not like It's with Jake and I, and Gabe is able to do it, and nothing happens.
Kevin, I think you have started a movement, because I just got a new MacBook Pro, and I checked in with the tech crew on a junket, because before you do junkets, you check in with, make sure everything looks and sounds good. And I said, hey, I may need you guys sort of to walk me through the process again. And they said, all right, but we really need to sit you down and make sure that we don't have this gestures thing. And so you have like everyone on standby and afraid that we're all going to start this whole gestures thing.
Well, Meg Ryan thought it was hilarious.
was hilarious.
Thankfully, when it happened, it really badly. It happened specifically in the middle of a Meg Ryan, David Duchovny interview, and she thought it was hilarious. So
I'm going to argue that 99% of the time it's hilarious. Like, I'm sure there's going to be an example where it's inappropriate, but right now it makes me laugh so much.
Yeah. Luckily, it hasn't happened during something like massively serious yet. I mean, even though the John Batiste movie is serious, it was during like a fun moment, so it was fine.
That's hilarious.
But, anyways,
well, that's Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jake. How are you doing?
I'm going to be honest. I didn't even realize you hadn't introduced me. I thought we had moved on. I thought we were
rolling.
Hey, good to see you, buddy.
That's how the three of us go this year.
Love you.
And Gabe Kovacs is joining us in the producer's chair. Gabe, thank you again for like I said, holding down the fort while I was wasting away to nothing.
My pleasure. I'm glad you're feeling better, buddy.
Coming back from, and I knew it was going to happen. Coming that Paris trip. My only contribution to this discussions of the Paris trip is that I was looking recently at the Paris photos, the Eiffel Tower photos that we posted, and I thought, what, we were in Paris like a week ago.
Yeah.
Like that the whole thing was such a whirlwind. It was such a whirlwind that I feel like even though we enjoyed our time while we were there, I can't process the fact that we were like flew to France and back. And we do this a lot. I get that we do this a lot, but it's still unnerving. Like, it's just weird that
I don't know about you. For me, the only saving grace, because there's no way to say this without being like, oh, I've been to Paris before, but like we've all been fortunate enough to have been to Paris before. If that had been the first time I'd been to Paris, I would have been pretty disappointed at our inability to, quite frankly, do anything. Yeah, because I always told people
like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, well, you were, but adjacent to working. You were still like you were working the whole time.
It was all work.
Like you literally flew in early to work.
I literally landed and went to the Louvre to get because I was all part of
it. Yeah. So so I think to me that's kind of what made the quickness of the trip bearable, for lack of a better word. Just sort of like, okay, because we've been there before, we've seen it, and it was great to sort of see it again. You never get tired of seeing, the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe. But
Napoleon's tomb.
That was the first. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
That was very cool. Well, anyway, if you're joining us on the YouTube channel, very much thank you so much for joining us. And go down, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. You'll be alerted every Friday morning when the new show drops. We appreciate that. YouTube.com/ReelBlend Podcast. Of course, we're available all the different places where your audio needs are met. We are receiving plenty of messages from people who are letting us know that we have made their Spotify Wrapped, which I think is really, really cool.
That's
Thank you for the people who have listened to ReelBlend and logged a wild amount of minutes. I did my Spotify Wrapped. I realized that my number one podcast is The Rewatchables, which is terrific and not our own, because I don't really listen to our show all that much. But as everybody was getting their Wrapped and then mine came and it wasn't us, I was like, I guess that kind of makes sense. Were we in your top five?
That's
yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. No. For podcasts, yes, you were. Yeah. We were. Okay. Kev, we both had Blink-182 as our number one. That's right. Yeah. And then it said peaked in October, which is when the new album came out. So I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, mine was like Blink, Ready-to, Nas, Killswitch Engage, and Slipknot. Those are my four.
that computes for
Pretty
you
good
without
list.
a doubt.
Yeah.
So, and of course, if you've signed up for ReelBlend Premium, you get an ad-free version of the show. And then this week you will get a newsletter from me. And I had an idea. I was going to write it earlier, and now I forget what it is. Okay, I'm going to, I don't know. You guys will know by the time you're listening to this, it'll be in your inbox. So, Alexander Payne, we've been trying to get him on the show for a little while. We've had some scheduling conflicts. His movie has been enjoying a bit of an extended rollout. It went to a couple of different fall film festivals, generated a ton of buzz. It is now coming out in select theaters, I believe. I think it's still, or is it? It's everywhere now.
In theaters. It's been in theaters for a few weeks. Okay. It's. I believe it's reached its full release. I'm not sure if they're going to add more theaters later on, but it's doing really well in terms of box office. It's good. Literally holding over like week to week. But it's also the week we're recording this, since it's been out in theaters for a few weeks now, it's also available on demand. I think as of this Tuesday. So we're recording this on Wednesday.
Fast.
I saw a great tweet about that, because we all know that we're in a different world now and things are going to streaming a lot quicker than they were before, which is an interesting thing with Barbie and Oppenheimer, because Barbie went to streaming way quicker, way more, way faster than Oppenheimer did. And now Oppenheimer is out this week on demand, or last week on demand. And so that one had a healthy theatrical, as did Barbie, but it did go early. Holdovers is an interesting one because it's one of those films that is doing well at the box office. It actually is having good legs. And I think Warner Brothers did this too. When Barbie was initially announced to go to VOD, they pushed it an extra week because it was still doing well in the box office. And, you know, even though it came out on demand, it was like $24.99 or whatever it was to buy or rent or whatever it was at that time. It is an interesting thing. If I'm Focus Features and I'm doing the Holdovers and I'm seeing the hold this movie's having week to week, I would push that back.
Wait, I wonder because in theatrical, they have to split what they're earning with the theaters. If it's streaming, do they get a bigger piece of that?
It's an interesting point. I mean, because and it's interesting because, so like I saw a tweet about this and like how this was actually too early. So now I will say this. Let's put this into perspective. When I say a film is doing well, Holdovers has made 13 million so far at the box office. Now, it's doing well for what it is, right? And I don't believe the widest release in terms of theaters. I have to get the exact numbers, but
I'm
like
only
for example,
seeing like 1,600 theaters, which is about less than half of what. Yeah,
like its opening weekend was 211,000. So clearly they went. It seems like they're platforming it and it's going wider and wider. But it is an interesting thing to think about. But this is one of those films that is available on demand. So if you are interested in not leaving your home, I recommend going to a theater. But in terms of this movie, it's doing well for what it is. Yeah. And
I will tease in our interview that Alexander will tell you where you should go if you want to see a 35 millimeter struck print of the Holdovers as well, too. There's certain theaters that he singles out individually. So there's your tease. And now here's the whole thing. Here's Alexander Payne joining the ReelBlend podcast to talk the Holdovers.
I'm going to start off with a personal anecdote that meant a lot to me. This is one of my favorite films I've seen in a long time. And I've been on antidepressants since I was 14 years old. And obviously over the years.
How's your sex life?
No, I mean, you know how antidepressants, you know what they can do to you. It's terrible. But the reason I bring that up is because there's an amazing sequence in this film where we learn that both Paul's character and Dominic's character are both on the same medication. And I thought to myself, man, you know, in those times, and obviously in recent years, it's become more destigmatized, but to have known that a teacher was also dealing with the same problems that I was dealing with as a kid would have been profound to me. And this is taking place, obviously, decades before, but I was just curious where that came from. And is that something that was personal to you? Because I found that to be such a beautiful moment in the movie.
It's very refreshing to get a brand new question about this movie. So thank you for that. No, I have to credit David Hemmingson, the writer, with the Librium joke. I mean, it's both funny, but also a kind of a lovely linking device between teacher and student. They're both on the early generation Librium antidepressant. Yeah, thanks for picking up on that.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
So I kind of want to use this film, The Holdovers, and even go back to Election as sort of signposts over the course of your career, and specifically how they deal with the thoughts of the teacher-student relationship. And whether you even, in looking at the characters, feel closer or relate to, back when you were doing Election, whether you related to Tracy or related to Mr. McAllister or even as a director, you have to, a writer, director, you have to relate to everybody on some level, even if they're wildly different from you. Right. The only way you can write a character and later, as a director, know what the actors are going through in a given scene is to feel those feelings yourself. So, I certainly try to get to know all the characters and relate to them as much as I can. Now, have you seen that evolve to maybe the way that you view a teacher or a student in the way that you approach Holdovers now? I'd like to say I evolve. You know, heck, that's 25 years ago. I hope I've evolved somehow. Still make a lot of life mistakes, but the other part of me just wants to say they're very different stories. And each story had different requirements for, Election's kind of more of a cynical fable in a way. And this one's a little bit more of a, I don't know, understanding or
empathetic look at no, I think I'm always somewhat empathetic. I don't know, man. Maybe that's for you to say. I don't know how to say it. Or at least you should ask me to think about that in advance. I could put some thought into it.
That's fine. We're going to try to hit you with a few things you haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, don't expect great answers, but keep going.
That's okay. That's okay. There's a Picasso quote that you use in this film that I found deeply profound as well, which I'm going to go ahead and read it to the audience. Is every child is an artist.
Never heard that before. That's pretty common.
I had not heard this quote before, and
all right.
That's, what I don't know what that says about my education, but I had not heard this quote, and I love the quote. And so every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. And I wanted to throw that quote to you as a filmmaker, because there's obviously a decision that's made at some point in your life where you're going to remain an artist. And I just wonder, I know it might be a loaded question to ask you, but do you remember that evolution where you were like, I'm going to remain an artist. I'm going to continue doing this as an adult?
I do remember that progression, and it's a lovely question. Thank you. And actually, I kind of had the artist beaten out of me for a while. I mean, I was not, as the product of a second generation immigrant background where education is certainly prized and pushed, but as far as career choice goes, artist is not up there with medicine, law, and business. So I distinguished myself well, I think, at my Jesuit high school and then at Stanford studying history and Spanish. But my parents were kind of hammering me to go to law school at that point, and then my fallback was going to be journalism. I applied to Columbia Graduate School of Journalism and got in, as I thought I might and hoped I would. Had I not gotten into acceptance letter from a graduate film school, my trajectory would have been very different. But anyway, I just remember very consciously when I got into film school, it was something I just had to try, even if I were to find out that I sucked at it. I consciously was telling myself, unlearn what I've been taught in terms of critical thinking and being very logical and critical, and try to feel more and don't look for logic. I just remember, I don't know how to put it any other way than to say I did consciously tell myself in my early and mid 20s, I've got to unlearn some stuff, some skill, and try to look into this other part because even though I had this academic training, got to remember my dad telling me, I didn't send you to Stanford to become a waiter. But even I had this academic training, I'd always kind of been a huge movie buff and also kind of a class clown, and, wrote a lot of, funny columns. And I always tried to be slightly, I don't know, not tried. I was always slightly iconoclastic, I guess. But anyway, film school is very important for me, I think, in terms of that transition from a traditional background, high school and good college education, to then pursuing a career in the arts. I kind of needed that conservatory atmosphere of film school to develop that muscle.
I know this sounds esoteric, but did you feel like you found your people then when you arrived at film school? Because
yes.
I can honestly say that until I found these idiots, I didn't really know who my people were. And the reason I gravitated towards these guys and we did this show is that I felt like I found my people finally. Did you experience that?
100%.
Yeah.
And some of my closest friends in the world now remain my comrades from UCLA Film School. And then by extension, I just adore film people. And the circus tent is large. Young people think, God, or their parents tell them, oh, how are you going to break into movies? It's so hard and so cliquish. And, and to become a director, for example, or an actor, God, it's just so the odds are so against you. Yeah, maybe for a couple of the jobs, but the tent is huge. And there's so many different and generous. It's huge and generous. If you want to work somehow in movies, you can. It may not be as a cinematographer or director, but you can work in those departments. There's during production. It's, 200 to 300 people are hired, and then add, a significant amount of that in post-production. I'm working now with a marketing and publicity team for a studio who are as disciplined and crack and movie crazy as anyone who works in production. So, and then add on preservationists, film restorers, film festival programmers, people who run cinematechs I'm from Omaha. We have Film Streams or the Belcourt in Nashville or Coolidge Corner or, wherever you want to go there. It's a really large world of film people, and they're all part of the tribe. And I adore them. Sure, you meet some egotistical assholes from time to time, but you do in any walk of life.
Sure, definitely.
Mr. Payne, I'm going to tell you this.
Alexander.
I hope you know that I'm saying this. I found this film to be very comforting. And I find that in a very interesting way because it's dealing with very heavy subject matter in certain aspects of things, but also it just felt like a slice of life, real people, real problems. And these relationships between these characters are really beautiful. And then you have the 1:6 ratio, which gives it this claustrophobic feeling that we're stuck there.
Instead of claustrophobic, could you maybe say intimate?
Intimate. Well, the only reason I use the word claustrophobic is because of the Dominic's character, he feels like he's trapped. And I felt like that was an aspect of it. But the intimacy, no question, you're 100% right. But then when I walked out of the film, I thought to myself, no question, this was shot 35. It looked like film. It looked incredible. And then I learned to read that it's shot digitally. And I was blown away by that because it felt like a film from that time period. And obviously with the ratio, can you talk about the editing process to then bring it to the look that we eventually see? And when you're shooting on the day, how do you know where grain's going to pop or cigarette? How do you think about that as you're shooting digitally?
The cinematographer and I did tests on 35, 16, and digital. And with all three, we learned that we were going to have to do so much treatment after the fact to achieve a period film look that it didn't make a whole lot of difference. Do I wish we had shot film? Sure, but we shot digitally, and it just helps. You're just supposed to shoot digitally now for some reason, and budgetary, obviously. Anyway, it worked out fine. We did use period lenses, but a lot of filmmakers use period lenses even for contemporary films. I think a big part of it is the production design, what's in front of the camera. I just rewatched the other day Pavel Pawlikowski's Ida. That movie, that's a really convincing use of period. It's in the 50s or 60s. And you feel like you're there. It feels like it was as though it were shot then. And no aspect of period production design is, your face isn't rubbed in it. It feels like a contemporary movie, but made then. So, and I wouldn't say editing so much per se, but in the in the coloring with the digital intermediate, that's where we did all those, added a lot of grain, and there are some new grain products, new to me anyway. 10 years ago, I had put some grain on the movie Nebraska, and it wasn't anywhere near the quality that they have today.
Oh, interesting.
Excuse me.
I didn't know Nebraska was digital.
Yeah, but I appreciate your question. And also, if you happen to be in currently Nashville, Chicago, or Boston, you can see the holdovers on 35 millimeter.
Oh, did you strike a 70 print as well, or just 35?
No, just 35.
I can't wait. Fantastic. I would love to see it on film. That would be amazing.
The illusion is more complete. Because honestly, because then you have projection. I kind of care less about what I shoot on, but I like film projection because I always think flicker will always be superior to glow.
Yeah, very true.
Couldn't agree more. You're talking to the right show, because we spend hours and hours talking about film versus digital with like Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan, all these guys. Like, it's very fascinating to hear different filmmakers takes on that.
You got kind of absolutists. You've got Nolan and Tarantino on one hand, film. And, I still want to shoot film, and I'm all for it. But then you have like Fincher and Soderbergh on the other side. It's like, fuck film. Who needs it? We've got this other thing. And so who knows? The good news is that the job of the director remains technology proof. What's the story? Who are the actors? Where should they stand? What lens are we using, and how are we going to edit it? No matter what we shoot on, that job remains the same.
Damn.
Alexander, do you edit while you shoot, or do you? No, after that. Has that always been your process?
Yes. Who's got time? I don't have time to edit while I'm shooting.
No.
Who has time for that?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure how streamlined the process is, but I wasn't sure, especially going digitally.
I think Maniac Soderbergh edits while he shoots. Oh, I go shoot. Then I go home and edit, and then I get my 90 minutes sleep, and then go back to shooting the next day. And then I'm done within a week of like, I don't know how he does it. That guy's a machine.
You know who just told us that? Sir Ridley Scott said that he edits while he shoots.
Well, Ridley was editing Gladiator 2 because they were on the strike. That's why he got that. Yeah.
Well, look, my editor is editing. I'm not editing. Mm-hmm. The editor is slapping together, is putting the scenes together, and I watch it in bits and pieces when I start editing. But I don't even watch dailies.
Really?
And I do for like the first week or so to make sure things are, just get a feel for it. But then production starts, and I'm both too tired at the end of the day to want to watch dailies. Mm-hmm. And also, I was there when they shot it, so I know what we have.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is when I finally do enter the editing room, I want to enter it like an editor. Mm-hmm. With the cold, fresh eyes of an editor. I don't want to, then I can do that more coldly and objectively.
I'm really glad you brought up working with the marketing department, because there's a shot that fascinates our co-host who appeared briefly and then decided he was going to take off for the rest of the day. And it's the freeze onto Mr. Giamatti's face when Dominic's character makes the leap and then breaks his arm. And it's this hysterical reaction.
The freeze is in the trailer.
Yes,
it's the last shot of the trailer.
Yeah, it's the last shot of the trailer. And Jake loves it. It makes him laugh so hard every single time because of Paul's reaction.
Funny.
Did you know at the moment when he did it that you had something special that you were going to continue to use throughout the marketing, or is that just something you captured? And
when Paul Giamatti made that face as we were shooting, the shot was funny. I had no idea it was going to be in the stumbled upon that. We're like, yes, that's funny.
Yeah, I saw Oppenheimer so many times. Every time they would show the Holdovers trailer, it would just freeze on that shot, and it had like the movement of like the films from that day. I was very impressed by the camera work in this film, but also a lot of narrative choices. There's some really interesting canted angles that you use that create attention and intensity as well. But also there's this really cool shot when they're driving. You're like pushing into him as he's turning. I just love the little shots and details in the film. But I wanted to ask you, this is going to be more of a spoiler question. So we'll mention to our audience that this is going to be behind a wall where they can either skip ahead or go forward. But I think
it's not a murder. It's not a murder mystery. Who cares?
Okay, well then I'm going to tell you one of the greatest endings I've seen in a film in a long time was the decision to have these two characters shake hands and not hug. And as much as an audience member, I wanted them to hug because they earned it, right? But at the end of the day, in my mind, the handshake makes total sense. And I'm so happy you didn't go with the hug. And I was just curious what the decision-making process was there. Did you ever consider the hug? And what do you think the handshake signifies? I think it's way more apparent to their characters that they handshake.
The answer is contained within your question.
Okay.
There was no decision. They would always shake hands. I didn't even get a close-up of the hands clasping. Huh. It just wouldn't have been appropriate. It's just better if they shake hands, and what they need to say is in their eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not in the gesture. It's in their eyes. And they both do a very good job with what they're saying in their eyes, which is essentially, I love you and I'll miss you and thank you. Mm-hmm. That's all there. They don't need to hug.
Oh, it's like in my heart, I'm like hug, but they shouldn't hug.
So brief anecdote about that. I don't know if you probably do, who the legendary film editor and sound designer Walter Murch is. Mm-hmm. Well, I called Walter Murch before making the film to ask him for advice on the sound, because I knew I wanted the movie to be in mono, but how to do it. We talked about, make sure no sound is 8 dBs, a lot louder than any other sound, including a gunshot, all that kind of stuff. and cut to the London Film Festival a couple of months ago. So I'm over there, and he happens to live with his wife in London part of the year, and he came to the screening. And I was, very honored, of course, that he showed up. And I ran into him after the screening, and he said, good job. I said, fine. And then remembering our conversation, he said, you know what the most 70s touch of the film was? I said, no, what? He said that they didn't hug.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, that stuck with me. And I saw the movie like a month and a half or so ago, whatever it was. And that scene,
it's not a very emotional decade,
but it's perfect.
Yeah. They're a little bit closed off. So I heard you mention in a recent interview how you still love to have actors read for you, and how even when you had Bruce Dern for Nebraska, that he was kind enough to come and read for you. Returning to Mr. Giamatti, did he read for you for this script?
No.
Not necessary.
In general, I do like actors to read. It just helps. It just helps me see the movie, and it just helps me out. And it's nice to have kind of a proto rehearsal, just sort of so I can think about what to do with this actor in that part. The exceptions in my career have been Jack Nicholson in About Schmidt, Bruce Dern. No, Bruce did read. Oh, I didn't ask Clooney to read for The Descendants.
Okay.
I just thought he could probably do it.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing actor. I've always wanted to ask this because I find this interesting.
Oh, and I didn't have Matt Damon read for Downsizing.
Oh, okay.
Not that you saw it, but
Downsizing made my top 10 the year that it came out, sir. I beg to differ. I thought that movie was terrific.
Thanks. Very kind. Thank you.
I've always been fascinated by how a director chooses to say or present themselves in the credits. Martin Scorsese does a Martin Scorsese picture. Quentin Tarantino does like the 8th or 9th film by Quentin Tarantino. I believe you do an Alexander Payne movie. And I've always been curious if that's a decision the filmmaker makes, not to use movie or use film or a film by, but also how you place your credits. I think your name ends up on the back of a chair in this one. And I was trying to remember, do you think about how that process works? And I even think you use the same song twice in the opening credits, if I'm not mistaken. So I was just curious, how those credits.
Wait. You're like 5 questions in this one.
Sorry.
Stop right there. Okay.
That's Kevin's approach. He'll hit you with 5 questions.
Sorry. I have so much I want to ask you.
If you must know, this was my 8th feature film, and the first one in which I actually put a film by I've always had the contractual right to do it, but I eschewed it. I've always thought directed by is a fine enough credit for me. And I don't know. I got to say, even producing credits, like everybody wants such glamours. Everybody wants a producing credit. This is a movie where I had the idea. I found the writer. I called up the producer to see if he'd produce it once we had the script. I'm the Aristotelian prime mover. Do you think I took a producer credit? No, not interested. Also, when I hire a producer, I want to be able to say, you take care of this. You're the producer. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to take care of that stuff. So, but I guess because I had kind of originated the project and maybe I've been around long enough. I did, and a lot of directors of the 70s kind of did it. I did finally do something at the beginning, and rather than an Alexander Payne film, I just thought, I like movies. I don't want to get too precious, and there's certainly a pretentiousness in being unpretentious, and I plead guilty to that, but I like movies.
Yeah. Well, am I wrong? Am I wrong about the song repeating twice in the credits? Am I mistaken in hearing that?
You are correct. It's the same song, and then it's interrupted by 2 other songs, and then it's reprised. Then it comes back. Damien Jurado's "Silver Joy" is the song.
Huh. I thought that was really interesting. I've never seen that before. So,
nor I. We just, Kevin and I just stumbled upon that. Kevin Tent, the editor.
It's cool.
So, I do want to go back to a specific scene in Sideways. Obviously, it's you and Mr. Giamatti reuniting. And there's that moment from Sideways that still holds up to this day, which reportedly affected an entire alcohol industry, which is the I'm not drinking any more fucking Merlot. The day that you filmed that scene, did you have any idea the impact that it was going to have? No. And what kind of conversations did you and Mr. Giamatti have in terms of reaching that delivery? Because his delivery is so perfect of the line.
I don't remember. That's 20 years ago.
Sure.
But I rarely have to say anything to that guy. He just does it. I mean, he's so good in that scene. What's his name? Thomas Hayden Church says, "Did you bring your Xanax?" And he pulls out his jar, the bottle, and he shakes it like it's a maraca. Like, I can't do stuff like that.
Yeah.
In this movie, what's this one? The Holdovers. He's at one point he says, "Oh, Mr. Kuntz, or should I say Icarus, fly a little too close to the sun, did we?" This dialogue is in the screenplay, but that he acted out a little bird, fly a little too close to the. That's the actor.
Yeah,
those are marvelous things that a good actor can bring.
That's
fantastic. By the way, I'm going to give away something which it's not profound, but next year is the 20th anniversary of Sideways, and of course, I'm anticipating some, Santa Barbara County wine country invitations and celebrations. The idea is to only serve Merlot.
That would be amazing. Things might go.
We have 100%. We absolutely should. Let's
please
offer an olive branch.
Things might go sideways if that happens.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Settle down. Jesus, right. Kevin, we made it this far.
One of my favorite scenes in the Holdovers, and I'm going to go a little deep here because I love this moment. There's a moment where Paul's character essentially gets to reunite with kind of like a bully character of his, and Dominic is there, and they're talking about the concept of like where they ended up in their lives. And obviously with Paul's character, we know where he is in terms of his life. But I love that line that Paul says after they walk away. I think it's something along the lines of, he didn't deserve to hear my story. Or he doesn't deserve my story. And I love that moment. And I just wondered what, when you film a sequence like that and you shoot a moment like that, do you think at all about maybe interacting with people from your past that maybe didn't believe in you or maybe like bullied you or in some way? I think I was bullied a lot in school. So I just found that to be a great moment. I would love to, I just thought that was a really cool thing to say. He doesn't deserve my story. I think I'm paraphrasing the line, but I love that moment. So.
No. I didn't think about it. No, I didn't think about any of that stuff.
But what did that scene mean to you as a filmmaker to direct that sequence? I just love that moment in the film. I know it's random, but I do.
What I liked about it was where we were shooting, there was a staircase.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it would be nice if this friend from his past, that we staged it so he were a couple of steps above Paul. So he's looking down on him. That was my idea for that. So, the script is one thing and that's fine, but I'm also, thinking about how to stage it and keep the frame alive and everything. But also imply this power discrepancy between them too. So the Paul, what's his name? Hugh Kavanaugh is the guy. Mm-hmm. He's always looking down on Paul.
Yeah. I love that moment. Great scene.
Well, Alexander,
I got to say, but you're talking about the writing. So that's Hemmingson. That's all David Hemmingson stuff.
We're being told we're out of time. We really appreciate you coming on.
Well, this has been a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for asking really thoughtful questions and new questions for me.
We tried to. I mean, this is a long process for you on this journey.
Yeah. We'd love to get you back on.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Excellent. We'll have you back on again, Mr. Alexander. We really appreciate your time today. Congratulations on making one of the best films.
You can call me Mr. Payne.
Mr. Payne.
Right, take care, sir. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
We want to thank Alexander Payne for coming on the show. He's a terrific guest. We would love to have him back, obviously.
He's funny.
Well, yeah, and his humor is very much part of his screenplay. It's like he's just a dry dude. He's a dry.
Talking to him is like watching one of his movies. Like it's literally like watching one of his films. Like it's the dryness. It's funny. It's smart. It's he's a really interesting guy, and I was very fascinated because one of the things that we said in the interview, which is blew my mind was that the film was shot digitally. It looks, remember we had James Gray on for Armageddon time, and he walked us through this incredible process about how they're adding 35 millimeter grain to these films now, and you can't really tell. And I just thought that also I want to give Payne a shout out for just being honest. Like, it was cool that, like, there was a couple moments in that interview, Sean, and you remember, like, I would say something, he would try to defend it, and then I would give my reasoning, and he would go, "Oh, that's actually interesting." He was like, I'd never really talked to a filmmaker that you could almost not argue with, but like, can I go back and forth a little bit in terms of your terminology and what you meant by it? And it was just cool that he would make these very dry jokes, but he had no problem taking criticism or talking about it.
Yeah. And I mean, even at one point he was like, that I'm going to let you interpret it that way because I haven't thought of it this way. And that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And, he was really open to viewing his stuff through a different lens. Kev, I want you to keep going on Holdovers because I know you're a huge fan of it. And where does it fall kind of in terms of what you've seen this year? And also, how does it stack up to just your thoughts on other Alexander Payne films?
Yeah, I mean, I know Jake and I are very high on this film. It's my favorite movie he's ever made, no question. And I don't believe I've ever interviewed him until this interview. I have to go back and double check, but I don't think I've ever talked to Alexander Payne before. I actually didn't think we were ever going to get him. He seemed like a guy that was not really doing a ton of stuff. And when the interview opened, I don't know if this is going to be in the audio, but he was asking us a lot about our show and who we were and kind of what we do. And it's really kind of an interesting guy. So it was just interesting to meet him. Sideways, obviously, and you asked a brilliant question about connecting election to this, which is about a teacher relationship as well. And, his films have been a part of my filmography in my mind for, a long time.
I really like Descendants, too. I think Descendants is really good.
I love Descendants. I also, I don't remember Downsizing as well. I don't even remember if I saw it fully. I know, Sean, you said it was in your top 10. To me,
I wasn't joking when I said that, too. Like,
I know you weren't.
Legitimately, that made my top 10. I thought it was really creative.
I think this film is just a beautiful slice of life. It's just real people on screen and for 2 hours. And I just felt like I was watching humanity. I was watching people who were dealing with actual real life problems that were then connecting over their differences and finding a bond, especially the Dominic Sessa character. It's his first movie he's ever done. It's a phenomenal performance. Giamatti, I think, deserves an Academy Award nomination, no question. It's I think it might be the best performance of his career. And my first introduction to him was Private Parts, and that's still a great movie and great performance from him, but obviously a very different tone.
By the way, I watched Private Parts while I was sick because you kept talking about pig vomit, and it's on Amazon Prime, and it still holds up. That movie's really funny. Dude,
it's genuinely really funny. But The Holdovers is fantastic. The score is great. The soundtrack is great. Giamatti's great. The whole dynamic, the vibe of the film, it's so funny, but also extremely nuanced and subtle. And I think Giamatti is one of those few actors who just, like, nobody else could have played that part. I genuinely believe that. Like, that is catered to what he is great at, but he also takes a lot of leaps. I mentioned this in the interview, so I won't repeat this a bunch, but there was a lot of things in the film that spoke to me. The medication sequence, which I mentioned, I thought that was, and even like Alexander thought it was like a joke, but I'm like, no, that scene is unbelievably great. Like, what a character sequence. Yeah. And I also loved, and I was thinking about Gabe. We were telling Alexander during the interview, I was like, hey, we'll put this up against a spoiler wall because we're going to ask you at the ending. And he goes,